I knew I was in trouble the second Pierce started talking about estate taxes over the grilled salmon. Harlan wasn't even in the ground yet. My name's Ansel Sutterby. I was 30 when this started, and I'm still not sure what hit me harder. Losing my granddad, or realizing my own family was already counting his money while his body was still warm. My parents lived just outside Wayne, Pennsylvania, tucked into one of those over-landscape pockets where the hedges all look manicured by a nervous perfectionist. Friday dinners weren't about family. They were about power. You showed up or you paid for it in interest. Cold shoulders, passive jabs, little things that added up. Pierce always sat at the head like some boardroom kingpin. Lenora flanked him, polished up like she came straight from a ribbon cutting. Tamsin sat on the other side, face downcast over her phone like she was checking stock in people's opinions. I got the kitchen end chair, close enough to play waiter, not close enough to matter. That was my permanent seat, unspoken, unchanging. It was like a place card in a family that didn't need name tags. I told them about a case I mediated that week. Tenant nearly evicted, landlord folding after we proved code violations. Lenora gave me this brittle smile like I'd told her I bought discount socks. Pierce didn't even nod. He said, "So your car's finally paid off?" "Yeah, good. You thinking long-term yet? You know, career-wise?" I said, "I am." He raised his eyebrows like I'd said I planned to become a magician. Tamsin didn't say much, just looked up once and said, "You ever think about going corporate?" before going back to her screen. No one asked what I wanted. Harlan was the only one who did. He called me the next morning like clockwork, asked how dinner went. I said, "Same as always." He paused and said, "Keep your feet under you, kid." Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from, and let's continue. Couple weeks before he passed, we sat on the porch of his rundown farmhouse in Chester County. He wore that old brass pocket watch like it came attached to his bones, tapped it and said, "Some things only open for the person they underestimate." I didn't get it at the time, just hugged him, drove back home, and tried not to feel like a stranger in my own last name. But even then, I felt something shifting under the surface. Something was coming, and I was already behind. The drive back felt longer than it was. Before I left, a nurse pressed Granddad's pocket watch into my hand and said he'd asked that I have it. I pulled into my complex's lot around 4 in the morning, still gripping the watch like it was holding me together. My front door stuck like always, and I shoved it open with my shoulder. Inside, the air felt wrong, too still, too ordinary, like the world hadn't noticed what it just lost. I dropped my keys and didn't bother turning on the lights, just stood in the middle of the living room with my jacket half zipped and the pocket watch in my hand. The numbers inside it were real. I wasn't imagining them, but they were too fine, too shallow. I grabbed my phone and tried using the flashlight to magnify it, but the reflection off the brass just blurred everything. I gave up and dropped it on the coffee table. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I picked up without thinking. "Ansel? This is Blaze Harker." His voice was smooth, practiced. "I met your family earlier this morning." "I remember," I said flat. "I'd like to set a time to go over some preliminary documentation regarding your grandfather's estate. There are a few time-sensitive considerations." "It's still the same day he died," I said. "I'm not in the mood for time-sensitive anything." There was a pause. Then he said, "Understood. I'll reach out later in the week." He didn't offer condolences, just hung up. I stood there with the dead tone still in my ear, thinking about how fast people move when they already know where the money is. I finally crashed on the couch with my coat still on. Didn't sleep much. Woke up at 7, checked the watch again like something might have changed. The numbers were still there, barely visible scratches in a half circle near the hinge. 8 digits, maybe a date. But my brain wasn't ready to solve anything. I pocketed it and left for work like I was running from my own thoughts. That night, I got a call from Lenora. Her voice was soft, almost breathy, like she was halfway into a cry she wasn't going to commit to. "I just wanted to check on you," she said. "You mean like a mother?" I asked. Silence. "We'll be arranging the service soon," she continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "There's a lot to go through. Your father and I are trying to be as efficient as possible." "Yeah, I noticed." "Don't be cruel, Ansel. This is difficult for all of us." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "You weren't even in the room with him." "Neither were you," she snapped and ended the call. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. She was right. I wasn't. None of us were, but at least I wanted to be. 2 hours later, I pulled out an old sketch pad from college, half filled, half forgotten, and started drawing out the numbers from memory. I wasn't good at math, but I was good at patterns. The etching looked like 082219958, August 22nd, 1958. That didn't match anything in my life, but maybe in his. I flipped through some of Harlan's old letters and postcards I'd saved, ones he used to send me at college. Nothing stood out, no clues, just his handwriting, neat and patient. I held the pocket watch up again and thought about how he'd worn it right up until the end. Not for looks, for a reason. Whatever he put in that wall, whatever he hid, this was the first marker. And my family? They were already acting like they knew it existed. I looked around my apartment like I was being watched and finally said it out loud, like it might make it more real. They're not gonna play fair, so neither can I. Then I got in the car and drove to the farmhouse. The etching inside the watch caught the light when I tilted it. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it meant. That number wasn't decoration. It was a marker. I set the watch down, turned off the lamp, and stared at the ceiling for hours without sleeping. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a leather chair at Blaze Harker's office in Bryn Mawr, trying not to grind my teeth. The place smelled like fresh carpet and quiet judgment, walls beige enough to disappear into. No family photos, just glossy stock art of old books and gavels. Everything about the room said, "We win politely." Pierce sat like he'd just closed $1 million deal. Legs crossed, arms loose, but his eyes never stopped moving. Lenora had her hands folded perfectly, like she was about to pray for the cameras. Tamsin didn't take her eyes off her phone once, not even when Blaze walked in with the folder. He didn't introduce himself again, didn't say he was sorry for our loss. He just sat, flipped the folder open, and started reading the will like he was reading loan terms. "Major liquid assets," he began, "including trust funds and investment accounts totaling approximately $2.35 million, will remain under the control of the named co-trustees, Pierce and Lenora Sutterby." I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes on the window behind Blaze, where I could see a crack running through the outer pane. Someone once told me that glass never actually stops moving. It just settles. Like people. Tamsin Sutterby is assigned the residence on South Coleman Road and the attached portfolio account. Blaze flipped to the next page without even glancing up. My name came last. Ansel Sutterby is assigned the real property located in rural Chester County, including all outbuildings and land therein. That was it. No shares, no investments, no explanation. Just the farmhouse that everyone else had treated like a storage unit for the past 20 years. I waited. Maybe Blaze missed a line. Maybe there was more. There wasn't. Pierce turned toward me. His voice was flat but full of something smug. "Your granddad gave you what you can handle." I stared at him. "You mean the house with the rotting roof and the possum infestation?" He gave a half shrug like I should be grateful. Lenora added, "At least it's something with your name on it." I didn't bother answering. I stood, took the envelope Blaze slid across the table like a parking ticket, and walked out. Down in the parking garage, I didn't start the car right away. My hands were clenched on the wheel, knuckles white. I sat there 12 minutes before I could move. My jaw ached from biting down so hard. When I finally opened the envelope, there was the deed. No surprises there, but folded behind it was a piece of yellowed stationery. Harlan's handwriting. Tight, sharp, always in pen. It said, "If they do what I think they'll do, go to the house. Don't bring them. Don't announce yourself." No signature. No hello. Just that. That night, back in my apartment, I turned on the lamp again and opened the watch. I stared at the scratches until my eyes stung. They weren't random. They weren't decorative. Someone, he, had carved them like a message in code. Maybe the date. Maybe a combination. Maybe something else. I didn't know what yet. But I knew one thing. This wasn't a memento. It was a warning. The porch steps creaked under me, but it was a solid kind of creak, like old wood still refusing to give in. I sat there with the watch in my hand, fingers curled around the case like it could explain something if I just held it tight enough. The numbers still didn't make sense. But I didn't need them to. Not yet. I could feel what Harlan meant. Keep going. Stay quiet. Don't trust them. The next morning, I called Calder Delaney and told him I wanted to move fast but careful. He said he'd bring a small crew, guys he trusted, and that he'd start with the structural stuff first. Rot, mold, basic safety. We'll keep the pretty for later, he said. By the time his truck rolled up 2 days later, I'd already hauled out 3 dead window units, 3 dozen cracked tiles, and a small mountain of rusted nails. Calder did a full walkthrough again with a clipboard this time, boots echoing off hollow boards, eyes sharp. When we hit the living room, he tapped a section of the wall, then tapped it again. "This one's weird," he said. "Either they doubled up for insulation, or somebody wanted to hide something." That word hit me different. Hide. I didn't say anything yet, just nodded and made a note to come back to it. The crew showed up every day by 7, no loud music, no drama, just guys who knew how to work. We tore out wallpaper, peeled back insulation, and uncovered things I don't think had seen daylight in 50 years. Every evening I'd stay late, documenting things on my phone, checking the pocket watch under different lights, trying to match the numbers to anything in the house. 3 days in, Pierce called. He didn't ask how the renovation was going or if I needed anything. He just launched in, tone smooth like he was reading from a script. Your mother and I were talking. We'd like to take the burden off your hands. $18,000 cash, no fees, no closing delays. I laughed before I meant to. The land alone's worth more than that. You're making an emotional decision, Ansel, he said. This house is a liability. You'll see that soon enough. Then he hung up, like that settled it. 10 minutes later, Lenora texted me. Paragraphs, all about how the family name mattered, how the community watched everything, how my choices could reflect poorly on them. She ended it with, "We only want what's best for everyone." I didn't reply. I wouldn't have said anything helpful. The next day, Tamsin called me. "Just sell it and move on," she said, voice flat, clipped. "Why are you turning this into a thing?" "Harlan left me a note," I told her. "Said there was something hidden." She paused, not long, just enough to be noticeable. "Ansel, he was paranoid. You know that. He was old. He got weird about stuff near the end. That's when it stopped being just annoyance. That's when I realized they were scared." The pressure didn't stay in-house. My credit union called. A loan officer said someone identifying himself as my father had called, asking detailed questions about my mortgage and accounts. They hadn't shared anything, but they were flagging the inquiry for record. She sounded uncomfortable, even telling me. I said, "Thanks for the heads up," and hung up, stomach twisting. That's when it clicked. They weren't waiting for me to fail. They were building the failure ahead of me. Box me in financially, let the house stall out, then swoop in and say, "See, we were right. He couldn't handle it." I called Calder that night and told him I needed everything documented. Photos, timestamps, crew names, especially around that weird wall. He didn't ask why, just said, "Yeah, this has that smell." That evening I sat alone on the porch again. The night air smelled like wet dirt and old pine. I held the pocket watch up to my ear and listened like I expected it to whisper something back. It didn't, but I didn't need it to. I already knew what it was saying. Keep digging. After Calder's crew cleared out for the day, I went back to that weird section of wall with a pry bar and a flashlight. The plaster came off in reluctant sheets, and behind the second layer of studs I found a steel lockbox bolted into the cavity like it had been built with the house. I didn't touch anything else. I called the local police department and told them I'd uncovered a secured container inside a structural wall and that it might be tied to an estate dispute. They sent an officer to document the find. Calder waited with me, arms crossed, tracking the officer's hands like the house itself was evidence. The box sat heavy in my lap like it knew something I didn't. My initials were engraved so neatly it made my chest tighten. AS, not some scribbled label, not tape or marker. Permanent, intentional. The officer crouched next to me and asked if I had any clue what might be inside. I told him I didn't, but my voice shook and gave me away. Calder stood behind me, arms crossed tight over his chest, watching every move like he didn't trust anyone in uniform yet. I tried my birthday, the month and the day. The 4 numbers clicked like the lock had been waiting. The lid creaked open, slow and stiff, and there it was. The truth. 3 sections inside. 1 sealed envelope. 1 letter, folded and smoothed like it had been handled carefully more than once, and 1 thick stack of bank records tied together with fraying twine. The letter was on the same kind of yellow stationery Harlan always used. The handwriting was unmistakable, slanted, clean, no hesitation. I unfolded it and read the first line aloud before I could stop myself. "Ansel, if you're reading this, they did what I feared." The officer stepped back to give me room. Calder didn't move. I read the rest silently. It wasn't poetic, it was tactical. Harlan laid it all out. Dates, documents, who visited him and when. He wrote that Blaze Harker started showing up the year before, right after he refused to sign over financial power to Pierce. Harlan knew something was being drained, and he said in the letter, "If they push you out, go to the house. They won't think to look there." I showed the officer the envelope next. Inside was a full copy of a will, dated over a year before the one Blaze read to us in that fake polite office. Witness signatures, notary seal, all legit. In that will, the trust and the mainline house were left to me. The farmhouse, too. Pierce and Lenora were named only to receive $1 each. Tamsin was listed for a cash bequest and Harlan's personal effects. Not nothing, but not power. When the officer asked what I wanted to do, I told him I needed this recorded and secured. He nodded and radioed it in. Another officer took the contents into evidence bags and logged everything as I watched. I didn't blink once. Next morning, I met with Sergeant J. Park at the station in Powley. He walked me through what they'd started reviewing, 26 months of bank activity tied to the family trust. About $412,000 moved in small chunks into an account linked to Pierce. Every withdrawal labeled Authorized Transfer. Jay laid out the pages on a metal desk and pointed to Harlan's handwriting in the margins. Next to each big transfer was a note. Not my signature. Not my handwriting. Ask for camera logs. He looked at me and said, "Your grandfather built a breadcrumb trail. The man was smart." "He knew they'd come for it," I said. Jay nodded. "But he also knew who'd come looking after." I held the pocket watch in my hand the whole time, the weight of it solid against my palm. I didn't say it out loud, but I understood then. Harlan hadn't left me a fixer-upper. He hadn't handed me some sentimental wreck. He'd left me a crime scene, a storage vault, a trap dressed up like a mercy gift. The lockbox was just the beginning. My family thought they'd buried me in drywall and dry rot. They didn't realize they'd just put a spotlight on their own fraud. Greer stood in my kitchen, arms crossed, sharp blazer, sharper eyes. She didn't bring comfort. She brought firepower. "Your granddad didn't leave you property," she said. "He left you a case file disguised as drywall and rot." The next morning, she filed the petition to void the Blaze will and recognize Harlan's real one. It came with the chain of custody report from Sergeant Park, notarized statements, and the scanned letter Harlan wrote by hand. It was tight, clean, no holes to poke. 2 days later, she called from her car. I could hear the road noise behind her, the way she said my name like she was bracing me. "You're not going to like this," she said. "Judge Barton Kearns denied the petition. No hearing, just stamped and closed." "What?" I said. "He didn't even look at the file?" "Nope, 48 hours. Flat denial, no explanation." I stood there in my kitchen holding the phone like it might burn through my hand. Greer followed up with research. She pulled dinner records from a private club in Valley Forge. Twice in 1 month, same table. Pierce Sutterby and Judge Kearns. Add in a campaign donation from Lenora 6 months back and a shared golf tournament registration, and the pattern became obvious. It wasn't justice, it was favors. Then Blaze Harker showed up. Not to me, he wasn't that stupid. He went to Greer's office, tried to play diplomat. She emailed me his offer. I'd keep the farmhouse, get $70,000 for repairs, and sign a non-disclosure agreement surrendering every document and letter. Greer responded with a single line. "No." She didn't copy me in, just told me after. That same week, things got personal. My nonprofit director pulled me aside after a board meeting and said, "Ansel, we need to talk." A blog article had gone up that morning, calling me an unstable heir, exploiting family tragedy for attention. No sources, just tone, the kind of piece that sounded like it came from someone with money and a grudge. He showed me the link. The article quoted anonymous, friends close to the family. I said, "Let me guess, one of those friends has a degree in communications and a side hustle in passive aggression." He didn't laugh, just looked tired. I left that meeting shaking. Then Human Resources called. A complaint had been filed. Anonymous. Alleged I was coercing tenants for personal gain. I sat there while they showed me the packet. The language sounded clean, legal, and completely fabricated. I knew Tamsin's phrasing when I heard it. She might have typed it herself. It got worse. Greer forwarded me a petition filed in county court. Lenora had signed it herself, requesting a court-ordered competency evaluation for me. Her attached letter referenced my therapy history. She called me emotionally erratic and legally vulnerable. I sat down hard when I read that. I'd told her about seeing Dr. Pruitt back when I first started the job. Burnout, anxiety, nothing major, just maintenance. I'd told her because I thought honesty mattered. She saved it for this. Greer moved fast. She called Dr. Pruitt, who wrote a statement by the next morning. I was stable, competent, and in full control of my legal and financial affairs. Greer filed it with a motion to dismiss the petition. It worked, but the message was clear. They weren't just trying to beat me. They wanted to erase me. That night, Greer sat across from me at the farmhouse table, lockbox letter between us. She said, low and certain, "You're not just fighting your parents. You're fighting a system that protects people like your father, people who donate to the right clubs, people who play the long game." I looked down at Harlan's note. The words felt heavier now. He wasn't hiding cash. He He was hiding truth from a town that could be bought. Greer leaned over the farmhouse table with her laptop open, jaw tight. "This isn't probate anymore," she said. "This is federal." She walked me through it in plain English. The fake will, the forged signatures, the six-figure transfers across state lines. That moved us into bank fraud territory, and fraud didn't care about golf partners or private club memberships. "Your dad's money doesn't mean a thing at this level," she said, "not when paper talks." A week later, I got a call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was low, calm, and sharp in that way that made you sit up straighter without knowing why. "This is Merritt Crowell," he said. "I worked federal financial crimes for 39 years. Harlan Whitcomb was my case before I found out he was family." He didn't ask permission. He just said, "Tell me about Harlan." We met at a diner off Route 30 near King of Prussia. He ordered black coffee, didn't touch the sugar. He didn't waste time on small talk. "He left a trail," Merritt said. "I've seen plenty of fraud, but this, the timing, the authorizations, the repeat transfers, this was organized. Too clean for amateurs. Families don't usually pull that off unless someone's done it before." His last name buzzed in my brain the whole time. I knew I'd seen it. That night, back at the farmhouse, I went back through the letter from the lockbox. Third paragraph, dead center. "If Crowell reaches out, listen." It wasn't advice. It was instruction. I grabbed the watch and sat under a bright lamp in the kitchen, angling it until the engraving finally gave up its secret. 08221958, 8 digits. August 22nd, 1958. It hit me in the gut, not the brain. I turned the watch over, pressed near the hinge, and felt something shift. A tiny latch gave way. I popped the back open and saw a hidden compartment no bigger than a matchbook. Inside was a folded strip of paper and a key smaller than a dime, taped down with old electrical tape. The note said, "Go to Sybil's. Ask for the cedar box. Bring Greer." Next morning, Sybil Callahan answered her door with no surprise on her face. She didn't even ask why I was there. She just said, "Come in," and led me to the back closet like it had been rehearsed. Wrapped in an old scarf was the cedar box. She handed it to me with both hands like it was breakable, though it was solid enough to stop a bullet. Inside were folders, originals and copies, custody records, a revised birth certificate, a typed letter signed by Harlan naming Merritt Crowell as his biological father, dated, notarized, sealed. The birth record amendment was stamped August 22nd, 1958. That was the code. Harlan had been born Harlan Crowell. The name Whitcomb came from his mother's second husband. He'd been hiding it his whole life, and I knew exactly why. Pierce would have used it to claim Harlan wasn't mentally stable, wasn't fit to manage a trust, wasn't even who he said he was. I sat on Sybil's porch after and tried to breathe with all that truth in my chest. It didn't feel grand or life-changing. It just felt heavy. I called Merritt and told him what I found. He didn't ask for details. He said, "Harlan wanted you protected the way he wasn't." That line echoed. My granddad didn't hide things because he was paranoid. He hid them because he knew exactly how far people like Pierce would go. Pierce didn't wait for a judge to slap the table. He came out swinging in the court of public opinion first. The local paper ran a column calling me the estranged son, attacking his grieving family over a property dispute. The kind of piece that gets shared by church groups and realtors with LinkedIn opinions. Greer forwarded me the screenshots. Tamsin's fingerprints were all over the reporter's email thread. Quotes, timelines, even phrasing straight from her press release voice. Lenora posted a photo the same afternoon. Christmas tree, candlelight filter, the whole family minus me. Her caption, "In painful times we choose to love, praying for unity." No tag, no names, but everyone knew who was missing. The comments came fast. Hearts, prayers, people calling me selfish and mentally unstable. I didn't answer any of it, but it felt like watching my name being peeled off a mailbox in real time. A donor pulled my director aside at the nonprofit, asked if I was safe around vulnerable clients. That was the moment I stopped calling it a smear campaign and started calling it an ambush. My job wasn't just my income. It was proof that I mattered somewhere. And Pierce came for that with both hands. Then Blaze Harker got involved. Subtle at first. A phone call to one of our key funders, casually suggesting I might have diverted mediation funds to personal projects. That's how he phrased it. The funding partner sent my director the voicemail transcript, and my director sent it to me. No words, just the file. Greer moved fast. She had me gather everything. Emails, invoices, bank statements, timestamps. Every screw I'd paid for, every contractor check, all above board. She said, "This isn't just about money. Their whole move is to starve you financially and stain you publicly, so you fold." It worked, until they got sloppy. Greer pulled a round of internal discovery, consent forms used to authorize the trust transfers from Harlan's account. She called me with one in hand. "One of the signatures isn't your grandfather's," she said. "It matches your sister's handwriting." My stomach dropped. Not because it was surprising, but because I knew what that meant. Tamsin hadn't just benefited. She'd been used. 2 days later, she showed up outside my apartment. No makeup, no phone in her hand. Just her, arms crossed, eyes wet but not crying. She said, "Dad told me it was routine. He said it was just paperwork to keep everything in the family." She looked down at the pavement like it might change shape. I didn't read it. I didn't know what it was. He said it had to be fast. I asked, "When did you sign it?" 6 months before he died. The words hit like a punch that didn't bruise. She hadn't even realized what she did. She trusted Pierce because that's what we were all trained to do. Greer didn't sugarcoat it. She laid it out plain. If you stay silent, you're part of the fraud. If you speak, you help the case. Tamsin didn't argue. She just nodded once like something in her finally cracked open. That night, I sat on the farmhouse porch, watching the dusk roll in across the field. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a guy who'd finally seen what the perfect family wiring really looked like behind the drywall. Harlan hadn't just left a vault full of proof. He left a door open for someone like her to step through when the script finally broke. The courthouse in Philadelphia didn't care who Pierce was. It didn't care about golf memberships, family names, or church fundraisers. It was marble and metal detectors and United States Marshals who didn't even blink when he walked through. I followed Greer and Merritt through the lobby, the pocket watch in my jacket like a stone on a string. Outside, Pierce stood near the steps with 2 attorneys flanking him and a practiced smile aimed at a local reporter. Lenora lingered just behind them, holding a tissue in both hands like she'd been told to. Her church friend rubbed her shoulder in just the right spot for sympathy photos. Tamsin stood alone near one of the stone pillars, arms crossed, hair up, face hard. She looked like someone about to walk into the ocean and hoping no one saw her hesitate. Inside, the room was quiet but full. Greer set her case file on the table and started unpacking it one piece at a time. No theatrics, no speeches, just evidence. She laid out a timeline: original will, fake will, recovery of the lockbox, chain of custody through Sergeant J. Park. She moved like a surgeon. Each fact she dropped felt heavier than the one before. Then came the bank records, transfer logs, authorizations, signature comparisons. Greer didn't need to raise her voice. She let the documents speak for themselves. She showed the handwriting analysis report that flagged forged signatures, 16 in total, and then dropped the security footage logs from one bank branch, showing Pierce at the counter during a flagged transaction. Pierce's attorney tried to steer the narrative. "This is a family misunderstanding," he said. "Grief makes people see malice where there is none." The judge interrupted him mid-sentence. "Forgery and fraud are not misunderstandings," she said, voice flat. "They are crimes." That was the first time I saw Pierce flinch, not physically, but the smile dropped. His hands curled under the table, and he glanced at Lenora like maybe she'd find a way to fix it. She didn't look back. Then Merritt took the stand. He walked slowly but spoke clearly. He explained financial crime patterns, how clean the transfer structure was, how it mirrored systems used in mid-size embezzlement rings. When asked about his connection to Harlan, he said, "Harlan Crowell was my son, known publicly as Harlan Whitcomb, but biologically my child." The room didn't gasp. It just fell quiet, like everyone collectively realized the ground under their feet had been something else all along. Then Greer introduced the video. It had been recorded at Siebel's place, months before Harlan died. Sibyl and a notary sat beside him, quiet as he spoke to the camera. Harlan looked straight ahead. His voice was calm, deliberate. "I am of sound mind," he said. "If you're watching this, it means they did what I feared. Pierce Sutterby and Lenora Sutterby have acted against my wishes and forged my consent for financial gain." He said it plainly. No bitterness, just fact. Then Greer leaned toward me and whispered, "She's ready." Tamsin stood up slowly and walked to the witness box without being called. No lawyer beside her, no script. She said, "My father asked me to sign a document 6 months before my grandfather died. He said it was just paperwork. He said it was to keep things in the family." Her hands stayed clenched in her lap. "I didn't read it. I didn't understand it. I just trusted him. I was wrong." Then she added, "My mother told me not to say anything. Said it would blow over. Said people forget." Her voice cracked just once. Then she pulled herself straight again. And Blaze Harker told me Ansel was being given the farmhouse because he'd be too broke to fight and too proud to ask for help. That line punched the wind out of my lungs, my own humiliation laid out like it was part of a strategy. The judge didn't pause. She looked straight at Pierce and Lenora and said, "Remanded into custody pending formal fraud and conspiracy charges." Two marshals walked forward. No shouting, no cuffs in front of the room, just procedure. Blaze Harker's name came next. The judge cited him as a material participant and referred him for formal disciplinary review. After that, Greer showed me the docket entry later. Federal notice had been filed on Judge Barton Kearns for suspicious handling of the original will challenge. That part felt quiet but deep, like a gate cracking open behind a long locked wall. Pierce looked at me one last time before they let him out. That same stare from every childhood argument, the one meant to shrink me down, make me regret speaking. But I didn't flinch. For the first time in my life, he had no move left that money could buy. The headlines dropped, and they were impossible to ignore. I didn't search for them, but they found me anyway. Neighbors forwarding links, a coworker holding out their phone, even a tenant I'd helped 2 years back emailed a screenshot with, "Hope you're okay, we always knew." That one stuck with me. Lenora's social media flipped overnight. Comments under her holiday posts turned cold after the federal filing hit public record. Words like liar, fraud, shameful. Within a week, her profile vanished like it had never existed. That was her cleanup plan: delete and disappear. My nonprofit board called an emergency meeting about optics. I walked in with a folder full of bank statements, contractor invoices, and Greer's official letter explaining the smear campaign. No grand speech, just a step-by-step breakdown of motive and manipulation. They voted to keep me on. 2 donors emailed the next day to apologize. 1 doubled their grant. The farmhouse got finished in April. Fresh wiring, new floors, no leaks. Calder Delaney kept the final bill under budget and refused to let me round it up. "Your granddad was decent to people," he said. "This is just balancing the scale." We left one wall unpainted, the one where the lockbox sat, not for decoration, just to remember, Pierce pled out. Greer walked me through the deal after. He got prison time, had to pay restitution, and can never manage a trust again. Lenora took her own plea tied to conspiracy and the fake competency filing. Her signature carried weight in the wrong direction. Blaze Harker lost his law license. The disciplinary board's report was 2 pages, dry, boring, permanent. I read it twice just to feel the finality. Tamsin moved into a small rental near South Philly. No big speech, no drama, just one question, soft and direct. "Is there any way to make this right?" I told her, "Start by telling the truth every time, even when it costs you." She nodded like she already knew the answer. Merritt came by one Sunday afternoon and sat on the porch where Harlan used to park himself with a paper and iced tea. He didn't say much, just looked out at the field like he was trying to spot what got taken from him and what managed to survive anyway. Sybil came later with a peach pie wrapped in a towel. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just looked around and said, he'd be satisfied. Then she told me Harlan used to say the house wasn't supposed to be pretty. It was supposed to be stubborn. Something that didn't blink when people lied. I used part of the restored trust to start a small legal aid fund through the nonprofit. Quiet work, no press. Help for people tangled in the kind of family traps Harlan saw coming. When people ask what I inherited, I don't say money. I say I got a house no one wanted. And inside it, my granddad left the truth. The family that tried to bury me, they dug their own hole. Hold up for one last thing. If your own family tried to box you in and paint you as the problem, would you expose them or stay quiet to keep the peace? If you've got the hype feature, tap it to support this video and help it reach more people. Then please subscribe and hit like. It's one click and it matters a lot. And drop a comment, even good story, or tell me what you would have done.